Up next on the Way of the Renaissance Man, the fascinating path of a righteous golden warrior and the tale of the tales.
Welcome to the Way of the Renaissance Man podcast. This is a show about ideas, personal empowerment, and celebrating the rational life. Our goal is to help each other discover the tools needed to better focus our minds, integrate our thoughts with actions, and live the lives we really want. I'm your host, Jim Woods.
Want to hear a true story of international banking intrigue during the Vietnam War? Well, you've come to the right place. In this episode, Jim speaks with precious metals expert Michael Checkan, president of Asset Strategies International. Michael is a hard money warrior and someone who has been in the precious metals business for more than half a century. During this conversation, you'll learn all about the work Michael did for Vietnamese refugees to help them start new lives in the United States. You'll also find out how Michael assisted these refugees in converting their golden tails, which are literally thin sheets made of the precious metal, into U.S. dollars. Dollars that allowed them to make America their new home. Plus, find out Michael's current views on the latest run higher in gold prices, the tailwinds driving gold higher, and why it makes sense for every Renaissance man to consider owning some physical gold in his portfolio. And now, here's Jim's conversation with Michael Checkan.
So today, on the Way of the Renaissance Man podcast, I have the uncle of one of my favorite Way of the Renaissance Man podcast guests from last year. His name was Rich Checkan, and many of you thought it was a great episode. And now I got the master. I got the man who taught him everything he knows. Michael Checkan, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. You've got 50 years of experience here.
Yeah, there you
and
go.
I've been able to pass on some of that over the last 25 years to Rich. So he's doing a very good job. And he, like me, is a guy who believes in hard money. And that's my background, both in soft money, being foreign currencies, and also hard money, being precious metals.
Right. Now that's your professional focus has been for. You go back.
Starting in 1967.
1967. Now,
long time.
Now that was right around the Vietnam War era.
Correct.
And I was informed that you have some Vietnam War era kind of money stories that I had to hear.
You're talking about the tale of the tale.
The tale of the tale. Tell me about that.
Yeah, actually the story starts in 1971 because at that time President Nixon closed the gold window in August of 1971 because prior to 1975, a lot of people don't remember or know that gold was not illegal in the United States. And when I started the company in 1967 to 1975, I was dealing in more numismatic coins, like $20 gold pieces. We weren't able to deal in gold per se. So in 1975, two things happened. One, gold became legal, and secondly, the fall of Vietnam. And I've been to Hanoi and Vietnam and saw some of the things I was hearing about from the refugees that were coming in. So to give you a little bit of backstory here, the people I worked for was a company called Deek Pereira. And we were the largest foreign currency and precious metals company in the United States. And Mr. Deek, who was my mentor, he was asked by the State Department to go to the various military bases in the United States and also in Guam and the Philippines for the purpose of receiving the refugees that were coming in. And these were the people that were fleeing at the last moment Vietnam.
And coming to America.
And there were these were the good, the bad, and the ugly. So you had all types of people coming off, and later on the so-called boat people came.
Right. Yeah, a lot of those. I mean, I live in Southern California, and there's a huge community. I mean, it went from being a kind of a normal white suburban area for a long time. That's Westminster, Garden Grove area, and all of a sudden there was, when I was growing up in the 70s in LA, then all of a sudden there was like a bunch of Vietnamese people, and it was
right.
An interesting cultural phenomenon, and it was like some of the safest neighborhoods too. It was ironically.
Absolutely, yeah, no question about it.
I'm sorry, but continue, please.
So in any event, what we were asked to do by the State Department, per Mr. Deek, was to be there as a bank, as a foreign exchange company, and as a precious metals dealer. We had banks in our organization in the United States and also in Austria and Switzerland. And we also were primarily foreign exchange dealers up to the point of 1975 when we transitioned over to more of a precious metals company. And so what I was asked to do is Mr. D called me like on a Tuesday, and on Wednesday I was on a plane going down to Eglin Air Force Base in Florida. And I was carrying with me $100,000 in cash and also what would be a solution, an asset solution, to be able to check to see whether the gold was truly gold.
You can't bring that on board a commercial airliner.
Not even cash.
The money or the asset.
That's right. So I arrived and I was greeted by the local people there, and there were no. This was not no Vietnamese had arrived as yet. So what happened was over the next 2 months, about 5,000 Vietnamese arrived. They were coming in from, like I say, the Philippines and Guam, and they were coming into 5 military bases in the United States. So I worked out of a tent during the months of August and September, not a fun time in Florida, and we had a translator, and people would come to us for the purpose of, well, a number of reasons. One, they wanted to start a new life in the United States, which was common. The second thing is that they had foreign currencies that they wanted to exchange. And two, they had gold in the form of tails, which I'll get into, and also gold jewelry. And so on the
that was what the wealth their wealth stores were that they could take with them.
That's correct.
Were gold, you know, actual precious metal with value.
Yep. I'm not a gold bug, but I'm not a paper worm either. But this was a kind of an epiphany for me because I really started to understand the value of gold. It's something that's been around for 5,000 years, and it's something that travels across borders. So, and I also learned as time went on that you shouldn't keep all your money in one country, one currency, and one investment. So gold became a
the diversification aspect is
very important.
I mean, it's interesting. You and I, as investors in America in the 21st century, a diversified portfolios, different stocks, different bonds, some precious metals. But for that type of person in that situation, a diversified portfolio of gold meant being able to come to America and have a life and not surviving.
Absolutely. So, that's what this is all about. And what they came in, some of them, you have to remember, they were fleeing the country. They're only leaving with the most precious things, typically their family and whatever they could carry. And they were coming in with foreign currencies, but most of the currencies that I saw were in Vietnamese piasters. And I had to tell them it had no value because it's only as strong as the country, and the country ceased to exist. Yes. The other thing they had is they had diversified with assets outside the country, particularly in Paris, Hong Kong, and Singapore. And they also had cash, in which I was able to exchange and give them cash.
Now, what kind of did they have the Vietnamese currency in cash? Or
well, the Vietnamese currency they had no value, but they had it in cash, yes. And I saw a lot of it because they didn't know that it was going to become worthless. So that's a lesson there. Any
kind of fiat currency can become worthless because if it's based upon a government that, like you said, ceases to exist or that has zero value or zero credibility.
Correct.
And but gold doesn't care about the government.
That's not an issue.
It's not an issue.
Some people have said that paper money or cash is simply governments getting a piece of clean paper, putting some ink on it, and making it completely worthless.
Exactly.
As we've seen most recently in Venezuela, but we've seen it in Zimbabwe, and of course in history, World War I, World War II.
There's been numerous Weimar Republic. I mean, there's been all kinds of instances where currencies have been so hyperinflated that they literally bushels of cash to buy a loaf of bread.
That's exactly right. Mr. Dick showed me a picture one time. He's originally from Romania, which was basically Hungary and Romania as they changed borders all the time. But he showed me a photo of someone with a wheelbarrow of cash going to buy a loaf of bread.
Right.
I mean, it was that ridiculous during the Weimar Republic. Have you seen it?
Yeah, that's why I knew that was the kind of paradigm, and it's scary because it can happen anywhere.
It can happen anywhere, and that's happening here in the U.S. in the sense that our currency is being devalued.
Yes.
But let me stay with the story a little bit longer.
Sure. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. So if they had money outside the country, it usually was in the form of a check that I could cash through my correspondence and give them U.S. dollars. Now we came to the situation where they came to me with first time I saw in my life what they call a tael, T-A-E-L. It's sheet gold, and it's 1.2 ounces of gold. And I didn't know what it was to begin with, so I had to call and learn, because we had an office in Hong Kong, and what they had sent me is there's different types of tails. There's horseshoe tails, there's round tails, these are sheet tails. So I got the word.
Who knew?
Who knew? So what I was doing there is I was weighing the sheet gold, and then the market at that time, gold was around $150 to $175 an ounce. I was buying it and paying it out in cash. And then also what they came to me with was jewelry. I had to be careful with the jewelry because it's 22 to 24 karat gold jewelry. And a lot of the jewelry, because they wear their wealth in that part of Asia, that kind of jewelry also contained bits of sand and wax to make it a bit heavier. And so what we had to do, and they also oftentimes had rare or precious stones. So what I had to do is I had to break out the stones before I could weigh the jewelry.
So the stones were part of the tails.
No, the tails were separate from the jewelry.
Okay.
But the jewelry had also stones. So I had to knock them out.
And they're valuable too.
And they're valuable too.
Right.
And then what I would do is I would weigh it, and then I would pay them out in cash. The stones, we didn't have the mandate to buy the stones. But what I found interesting afterwards, because we treated them properly, and many Vietnamese are in the Washington, D.C. area, they came in, and since we supplied all the jewelers in the area with their gold, what we did was we referred them to some of the good guys and let them get a reasonable price after speaking to 2 or 3 of them.
Some value, yeah.
But what they also came out with were diamonds. They carried a lot of diamonds. And I think there's a guy in New York that's having a problem now that has diamonds in his safe.
Yeah, but, it's ironic that these things come full circle, because we're in mid-July here,
right.
And there's the infamous Jeffrey Epstein.
Absolutely.
And he's right now in the middle of being evaluated for getting bail or not. I don't know. It doesn't look like he's going to get bail.
I don't think they're going to let him out. He's too
But one of the reasons why is because he had a safe full of diamonds. And some phony passports.
A Saudi Arabian passport, which was out of date.
Yeah, he could use those to get out of town.
Yeah.
If he wanted to.
It's getaway money.
It's getaway money, and it's funny that when you want real getaway money, you don't get like a bushel full of cash.
Right.
You get some diamonds, you get some gold, you get the stuff
Something
that
that's
holds
portable.
value. That's portable. Exactly.
We're talking about alternative investments as opposed to traditional investments.
Exactly.
Which is your world.
Yes.
My world is alternative investing.
Yes.
So what happened was, as time went on, we got to know the Vietnamese in our community. We have a significant Vietnamese community in the Washington, D.C. area because of the military. A lot of military have retired in the area, and they sponsored them. In fact, a good friend of mine, who was Admiral Zumwalt, and his son, Admiral Zumwalt has passed, his son, Jim, I keep in touch with. But what he did was he took in a Vietnamese family into his home. And they stayed with him for, there were, I think, 2, a mother and father and 3 children. And he took care of them, supported them, and then what we did at Deep Pereira, we took the refugee in and gave him a job. We had to basically stand behind him, give our endorsement of him, and he worked in our accounting department. So it was an interesting stage of my life. It really taught me the value of gold. And I'd like to talk a little bit more about gold as it applies to what's coming on today into the marketplace, because in the old days, gold, had a value at one time of $42 an ounce. It went up to, during the 1970s, it goes in runs of 10 years typically. So in 1970, it started going up in value, and then gold became legal in the States in 75, and it went from about $150 an ounce up to $850 an ounce. Then it had a period of decline, and then in 2001, it went from $250 an ounce up to $1,900 an ounce. And then it corrected about 50%, and now it's going back up again. And I hope in my life now, this is the third wave that I can experience.
Yeah, exactly. Well, as of this morning, we're talking about something like $1,412 an ounce, something like that.
Just in that neighborhood.
Yeah, this is July 19th, so it's
turned.
It's turning.
Yeah,
it's definitely turning. I mean, just as a side note, as you know, my business is newsletters, financial newsletters, and I'm long gold in several of those newsletters and we've been for a while, and we've made some really good money in those positions. Mm-hmm. And the reason, of course, is the confluence of tailwinds, a dovish Fed, a lower dollar, bond yields that are like extremely low, and gold is attractive when real interest rates are low. So, so tell me more about that. Tell me what your future is for what's your diagnosis?
There's really between $1,900 and about around $1,500. Technically speaking, gold can run because it came down so dramatically. So I'm expecting gold prices to go higher. Now, why is it going to go higher? It's because of some of the old things in history where there are wars going on, and as you know,
geopolitics drives a safe haven bid into the currency.
That's one of the things.
Into gold. Rather.
Into gold, yeah. That's one of the things that's driving the market right now. Interest rates, low interest rates, because basically you have to measure gold potential value against securities, for example. And a lot of people have gone into securities over the last 5 years. What we're saying now to them is consider taking some of the profit off the table, putting it in gold, have between 5 and 15% in gold, and then also take a look at the other three precious metals, silver, platinum, and palladium. So my outlook is very bullish at this point in time because we were in an area of a range where it wasn't really moving up or down. Americans, for your information, typically don't buy gold until it's going up. Asians don't buy gold until it's going down. But I've got one last story for you if we have the time. Yeah. This is a foreign exchange and gold story. When I was working with De Carrera, we're talking about 1970 or so, we were mainly foreign exchange dealers. Now, what we were looking for was to buy Nigerian pounds initially, but it was changed over to Nigerian naira. They changed their currency. And so, how did we get those currencies? Typically, Switzerland has been a place to buy foreign currencies. A lot of money goes into
the Swissy was the main currency for some time.
Right. People would take their currency, the Indian rupees or the Nigerian naira, and then move it into Swiss francs, for example. But my story takes you to Beirut. What happened in Beirut was that there were different groups of people coming into Beirut from Nigeria. They were going to Mecca for the purpose of the Hajj. So they would but they would want to party first before they got into their white robes and go to the Hajj. So they would drop their Nigerian naira in with a company called Gaspard Monaco Fills that we had a relationship with, and we would be buying those currencies from them. They would be shipping it to us in the States where we'd be selling it on a retail basis. Also, there were a lot of Indian rupees coming in. Now, where did the Indian rupees come in? Well, the Indian rupees came in from India, and they were coming in with silver to the Middle East, to the Dubai area. And they were coming in boats, and what they were taking back would be gold. And the gold would be different. It wasn't sheet gold, it wasn't coin or bars, it was a finger gold, which is much different. And what would be done is they would make it into jewelry and sell it, but this was all going under the cover because it
was it a money laundering kind of thing?
No, it wasn't money laundering, it was just illegal. The government said it was illegal to import or export gold. And so this is one way that we got Indian rupees in exchange on a arbitrage arrangement, and we were selling, what was happening is money was going in the form of gold, and they in turn were putting it into jewelry and selling it to the local people. So there's a foreign exchange gold kind of relationship.
Well, it's interesting too because that type of situation shows you that the money will get to where it wants to be regardless of laws or regulation or anything like that. And it's kind of interesting. It's something that your nephew said to me. And you may have been the person who coined this phrase, so tell me if you are. I want to give you credit, not him. He said the money always goes where it's treated best. Now, did you think of that?
Well, let's say we both thought of it.
Okay.
We'll leave it like that. Because I'd also like to tell you, where we're located, and also if you wanted to contact us as well.
We just have a couple minutes left.
Depending on how much time
we have a couple minutes left, but I want to make sure that my listeners know what you do. The company is called Asset Strategies International, ASI.
Right?
They're the company that I recommend in my newsletters for people that want a reliable, honest, good way to buy physical metals.
Correct.
So you guys are the man. You guys are like the only people that I trust to do this. So tell me more about the company. How, if someone wants to buy gold right now, how can they call you? How can they get in touch with you? I want everybody to know unambiguously that you're open for business and you're the man to do it. So,
well, I worked for Mr. Deek for 16 years, but then I started my own company, and it's a 37-year-old company. We're in the suburbs of Washington, D.C., Rockville, Maryland. We deal in gold in different ways, and also silver, platinum, palladium. They could be bought in the form of coin, bars, or certificates. and it can be delivered in the United States or outside the United States. So we can sell you gold and have it, if you're interested in having it outside the States, where you don't put all your assets and eggs in one basket. It can be put in Singapore, Zurich, London, Hong Kong, places like that.
You have the storage relationships for anybody.
That's correct. One thing that people should know is they shouldn't buy their currency from one company and that also provides insurance or safety or storage, because there's been a lot of abuse over the years.
Yeah.
They should buy it and they either hold it, they could place it in a local depository in the United States, or they could take it outside the country. The other thing I would mention is a lot of people don't know that you can put gold and silver and platinum into IRAs.
Yes.
And this is a huge market that's out there, and it's a market that we've been assisting from the very beginning when it became officially legal to own gold in your IRA.
Yeah, and we're not talking about just a gold ETF or something like that. We're talking about physical metals.
Physical metals.
And you can hold them, with the tax advantages of an IRA.
That's correct.
Exactly.
We do not deal in mining stocks or ETFs. We're non-regulated in that sense, as you are very regulated in your business. But people, if they're interested in giving us a call and getting a session that's free just to discuss their situation, they can call us at 1-800-831-0007, and we'd be happy to help them. Rich is there on a daily basis. By him being so good at what he does, I've been able to take some time off, and so
enjoy life. Yeah,
I'm enjoying life, going to conferences like this,
exactly.
and
hanging out with me while he works.
Like you.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Well, I'm honored that you chose to do that, and come back on the show again.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael.